Hey there, listeners. Thanks for stopping by to the podcast today. Please, before you're done listening to this episode, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, you can review now, and you can also review on Apple Podcasts. But if there's any platforms that I'm forgetting about and you can leave us a review, please do so. If you're happening to watch this on YouTube, and if you don't know, you can watch these podcasts on YouTube now, please like and subscribe to the channel and share the episode as well. So thanks for stopping by, everybody, and enjoy the episode.
Knowledge is Power is where you come to hear people's life experiences to learn from. So, without further ado, let's roll the intro.
Stay hungry, stay foolish.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
I have a dream. Will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Hello and welcome back to the Knowledge is Power podcast. This is your host, Max Willett, and we got another great guest on today. So if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi, Max. This is Doug Guilbert. I'm from Kingston Insurance Agency, and I have been in the insurance industry 20 years. And telling you a little bit about myself, I am from Rhode Island, grew up in Smithfield, went to LaSalle Academy for my first 2 years while in high school. And then after LaSalle, I left LaSalle in my junior year, went to Smithfield High School, graduated in 1996. And following graduating from high school, moved out west. My parents relocated to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Went to Arizona State, spent 4 years out there, came back, and I was during my period out west, I was dating my high school sweetheart, and she went to Syracuse University, and I moved out to New York and Syracuse, and actually started my insurance career in Syracuse, New York, on the claim side, working for Wausau Insurance Company. And very quickly after she graduated, we relocated to Bedford, Massachusetts, still working on the claim side of the insurance industry, then relocating from Bedford, Mass to Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and bought my first house back in 2003, and stayed in the claim side. And right after I purchased my house, or I should say, when I moved to Rhode Island, the World Trade Center event happened. And one of the companies I was working for, called Cambridge Integrated Service Group, which is part of Aon, had employees in the second tower. And my job, we actually went down there as part of a catastrophic claims unit. My job at the time was to basically call, as well as other people, call all the families and find out if their family members were alive or did not come back home following the World Trade Center collapse. And so it was a very tough time. I was actually pretty much out living in New Jersey straight for about 6 weeks when this was all happening. It was a very stressful time frame. And when it was all said and done, after that 6 weeks, they were happy with my result, what happened, how I conducted myself, and decided to give me all the claims that were from the World Trade Center. So I had all the casualties, which was over 200 people that lost their lives, and I had all the medical onlys and all the lost time cases, and did that for about a year, and then just became too stressful, and ended up working for one more claims company. Moved my way up through on the claims side, became a claims supervisor, and then after doing claims for about, I'd say, four to four-ish years, decided that it just wasn't for me. Didn't enjoy it. I wasn't able to help people as much as I wanted, even though I was on the claims side, because as everyone knows, being in claims can be sometimes a little adversarial instead of, being cooperative. So I decided to become an insurance producer, worked at, several large insurance agencies in the state of Rhode Island, and basically promoted that worked my way up through that career. Worked at several agencies, started my own agency back in the middle of COVID in July of 2020. After working for several agencies, I decided that I just wanted to go in a different direction than what I saw the other agencies were going in. And there's not a lot of young people starting their own agencies, and decided to go for it. So started working out of my house for the first 6 months, selling insurance. And in January of 2021, opened a physical location down here in Wakefield, Rhode Island. And we have about 1,200 square feet. Ended up, growing from just myself only to now we have a couple full-timers and myself, and we're actually looking to try to hire and bring on another personal or commercial sales producer. So we're actually looking for that right now as we speak. And while doing that, I believe in continuous education, and throughout my career, I've been involved in several industries. I've had ownership in a CBD company that I co-founded by the name of Caduceus LLC. No longer have a majority stake in it, but I helped co-found it, and still a little tiny owner. And I've also been involved, had some ownership in some prior cannabis cultivation facilities, and for a very short time frame, I was involved with one of the dispensaries in Rhode Island, but no longer involved in that. So that's basically, and I also have my real estate license as well.
Oh,
and
okay.
Like I said, I do believe in a continuous education. Studying for my broker's license right now as we speak, and I helped form with a broker a licensed brokerage company in Rhode Island as well, called Matunic Real Estate. So, and that's pretty much all I have going on for me. I know it's kind of boring, but
no, that is not boring. That's a very, very interesting life story. You've been through a lot and done a lot. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, you've been all over the country, done a lot of different things. So I have a few questions for you, and I'm sure I'll think of more as we talk further. Yeah, so why don't we just start asking questions? I'll just start asking questions about college, because I always like to ask my guests about like their college, and because we live in a world where a lot of people feel like it's college or nothing. You know what I mean? And I'd love to hear more about your college experience. What did you major in, and what did you go into college thinking, and when you left, what did you feel like you got the most out of college, if you follow those questions?
I went to college for computer science engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to college, I had a lot of fun in college. I joined a fraternity and did a lot of partying while in college. Didn't learn as much as I had hoped. And I feel that for being in what I do for a career, college wasn't really necessary, to be quite honest with you, for what I do for a living. I do sales. I wish colleges prepared people more for life experiences, financial planning, how to run a business, more like business related courses. But I don't feel that college really put me in a situation to be necessarily successful from day one at running a business. So I do think colleges, from people I know, a lot of my family members went to some pretty prestigious colleges and have done well and retired at young ages. And it's basically a lot of corporate America look at college that you show the dedication for 4 years to complete it.
You showed up. And
you showed up. You showed up
yeah.
and you completed something. So it was a task that you did and completed. Yes, you learned some things, but unless you're in a really specialized degree, like maybe engineering or nursing, where you have to have some type of, you're learning specific things to actually treat people, or engineering, like where you're doing, things to become an engineer. But even your entry level 4 years bachelor's degree in a lot of those situations doesn't prepare you enough to do what you may need to do for a career like engineering. You're probably gonna need a master's degree or maybe a doctorate. So I think the next level is, the masters, the doctorates are, depending on what your occupation is, or if you become a medical doctor, like an MD, are really important. But I think a lot of people that graduate with liberal arts degrees, it may not, help them depending on what they want to do for a career. But like I said, it's, especially in today's day and age with college being, depending on if it's a private university, it can be as much as $100,000 per year. So you graduate college with a $400,000 loan. If your parents couldn't afford to send you to college, is it worth, are you going to be making enough money at 30 to 50 grand a year to substantiate a $400,000 loan, which is basically a house? Would a house be in the Northeast, or a really, really nice house out West or down South? So, I don't know if that's what you were expecting for an answer.
No, it's great conversation. Obviously that's on the extreme end, but you're absolutely correct. I feel like definitely when I was in high school, and I've talked about this on podcasts before, when I was in high school, it was, and I'm guilty of this, I'm not going to lie to you. There was that feeling in the back of my head that if I don't go to college, I'm a failure, and the kids that don't go to college are lesser than me.
Yes.
Which could not be further from the truth. And, you live and learn. And I felt that way, and I was pretty thick-headed about it. And now I'm a few years older, and I've learned that that's not true, but for college, it's different for a lot of different people, right? There are people that need college. They need to
make the growing up. A lot of them also need to mature while they're in college.
Precisely.
I was pretty mature, I think, when I already graduated high school and I was already in college, but except with, partying, drinking, but that's another story.
Yeah.
That wasn't growing up, but
yeah, that's okay. I mean, in the first episode of the podcast, so when I created this podcast a couple of years ago, the first episode I had on was a business mentor of mine, Kurt Harrington. Mentioned him again, and been mentioning him a lot in the past few podcasts. So Kurt, maybe we got to have him back on. But
what's his name?
Kurt Harrington.
I know Kurt Harrington.
Yes, the best, the fish guy. The fish guy.
Yeah, I know Kurt. Yes.
He's the best. But we were talking about college, and I was actually still in college when I created this podcast. I was a part-time student at CCRI, and I was very, very much out of it. Really didn't like my time in college. CCRI is glorified high school, really. And the professors I had sucked, and I couldn't understand a word they were saying. And it was in the middle of COVID. Well, not really. Towards the end of COVID, when I was at CCRI, and they still had all these strict rules, but they felt like it was a good idea to go shove us in the corner of a room of the campus with, no windows and 30 students in a tiny room. Like the masks are going to do anything in a confined space like that. And so it was like just really hypocritical. It was hot in there, and then it was cold in the winter, and it was just horrible. Sorry, CCRI, but I've heard a lot of good things from a lot of different people, but my experience just wasn't that good. And I was just out of it. And we were talking about that with Kurt. And for him, he said college was more about the connections than it was what he learned. He met a lot of people, a lot of lifelong friends in college, and that's what his biggest takeaway from college was.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also depends too on what college you go to. Some colleges, you may make some more of those lifetime connections. I know people that go to Harvard and Brown and Dartmouth and Yale, and a lot of the students who go there, they could be second, third, fourth, fifth generation, sixth generation, 6 generations have gone there, and there, there's a lot of people that are titans in enterprise, and famous families, and they make a lot of really good connections that help put them at a really good advantage throughout their career. Then there's also the connections you make where, like, when I went to college, you join a fraternity, you're part of a local organization, and then now I'm still a member of the fraternity, and I'm still involved on a local and a national level with the fraternity. And we just had our I think it was our significant anniversary, 150th year anniversary a couple of years ago. So I think this year it's like 152nd anniversary. But you build a lot of, and that's a good network. The people in the fraternity, own businesses, they're like-minded individuals, and it's a good network to have when you join any type of organization, where if you keep in touch with the people that you met at college, or maybe some people that you have something in common with, you were part of a sports team, or anything you decided to do. It doesn't have to be a fraternity. You did rugby as a club, or you did tennis as a club, or anything, a golf team, so I think anything that you decide where you meet people, you stay in touch with those people, I think, and you can do that college is beneficial for that, but depending on, if you're, how outgoing you are, I think you can do that with anything in life. There's a lot of networking groups if you own a business in Rhode Island, BNI groups. I don't belong to BNI, but there's BNI groups, there's chamber groups, there's just other groups out there that aren't a part of BNI or a chamber. You can always join as well. So there's always things you can do to try to meet and network with people. And I think that's really true.
Yeah. Well, that's how we met, was through the Southern Rhode Island Chamber. So, it's and one of my friends actually made me aware of fraternities aren't all about parties.
Mm-hmm.
The fraternity my friend is a part of at University of Tennessee does a lot of charity work as well. So they do a lot of great community things as well.
Yeah.
So do you feel like the biggest takeaway from college for you was the connections, or was it something else?
Yes, I'd agree with that. Probably through the fraternity.
Yeah. Okay, great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that about college. So let's get, after college, you said you went directly into insurance, or did you go into a different career?
No, I went directly into insurance on the claims side.
All right. So could you explain the process of how you got into insurance, and sort of like maybe the licensing process, and sort of like the initial first day in the office? What were your responsibilities? I'm curious to hear that.
I had just saw an ad in the paper. I was looking for jobs and applied for it. I really didn't have the intention necessarily to get in the insurance industry. I had a brother of mine that was in the insurance industry at the time. He was on the corporate side doing actuarial work. And I decided to, I thought insurance would be interesting. So answered the ad. They made an offer. I accepted it. And I started off as a claims assistant, basically making phone calls, doing what they called 3-point. They were called 3-point phone calls, where you had to call the employer, you had to call the medical provider, and then you had to call the injured worker, and basically almost like conducting interviews with all three groups of people. Find out from the medical provider, what did the person, how did they sustain the injury? What records do you have? Talking to the injured worker and find out, please tell me what happened, and getting some information from them, and then finding out from the employer what from their perspective what happened, and then putting everything together, reporting it in the computer system, and then trying to make a determination of whether or not there should be coverage or not. If there was coverage, then you decided, you help the injured worker through the process of submitting the claim and administering the claim, paying them, calculating what they should be paid, and trying to get them back to work as soon as possible. That was the goal, is trying to get people, once they get injured, following treatment, to get them back to work.
So how did you get comfortable with calling all these different types of people that, it's not really cold calling. You can get into that later in like sales when it comes to your own business, but how did you get comfortable with calling these people? Like, did you have a particular mindset that helped you?
No, you just had it was the expectation of the job, and it just kind of went completely
Mm,
cold. And just people. No, I wouldn't say anyone was really typically confrontational. Sometimes, the medical provider, it's a business for them. The employer, sometimes you get a little aggravation from the employers that were frustrated with a situation where they felt someone got injured, but they really, it was questionable. And other times, the injured worker would also be upset about the employer or certain circumstances. So, but I say more times than not, everyone was pretty level-headed, and making the phone calls were not really that hard. The injured worker needed to do it because they wanted to get paid. And also at that time, a lot of the phone calls with everybody were recorded. So you had to get permission from the injured worker to record the phone call and let them know that the call was going to be recorded. And the same thing, not necessarily always being recorded on the employer end sometimes, but more times than not, it was recorded on the injured workers, and that phone
mhm.
call was recorded.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. So how long were you at that particular agency?
so I was I worked at a couple places when I was in claims, and I was in that industry for about 4 years,
Okay.
around 4-ish years.
And then the career after that was a different type of insurance, right?
That's acting as like a salesperson, as what they call
Yes.
producer in insurance, and
Insurance. Okay. So that's more, yeah, more salesy. So
it's more salesy. Yeah.
yes. So can you explain the process of you, like, because that's the first time you were in sales. What did you do to prepare and your mindset? For me, mindset's a big thing when it comes to sales, especially in real estate, cold calling, expired, withdrawns, or for sale by owners. Um, so what was your mindset going into sales and insurance?
Um, I mean, throughout high school and college, I was in other sales types of positions, that I
Hmm.
didn't mention. They're all like part-time jobs. Like I worked at a shoe store selling shoes, women's shoes, Tommy Can shoes a long time ago, and worked at a company called Zales, which was a jewelry store selling jewelry, and worked at I sold Kirby vacuums, which is, that's hardcore sales, selling vacuum cleaners, because they were $2,000 for a machine, and trying to, convince people to spend $2,000 on a vacuum cleaner is pretty hard. But
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so I had some prior, sales experience, but
Okay.
nothing prepared. So I'd say, if anything, maybe the vacuum cleaner position, but I developed an allergy, or I had an allergy that I didn't know about, to dust. And so the vacuum cleaners were very good, but after working in that job for about like 3 to 6 months, I couldn't physically handle it anymore because I was getting extremely sick. So I had to because of physical basis, I had to, leave that job. Couldn't do it. But getting the mindset for sales, getting into the insurance side is just, picking up the phone. It's just repetition. It
Mm,
was picking up no one likes to make that. The hardest thing to do was to pick up that phone, the first 10 phone calls, because it's a almost a difficult psychological mindset to pick up the phone, knowing that, I'm going to get a lot of rejection, and you do get a lot of rejection, and just continue this repetition, continuing to pick up the phone and not give up. Pick up the phone, not give up. When you start making hundreds of phone calls, and you do it consistently, it's like working a muscle that hasn't been used before. When you
mm,
first do it, it's very sore, it hurts a lot, when you exercise. But as you start to do it more and more, you get, you strengthen that muscle, you get more used to it, and it becomes more comfortable, and it's less pain. So I would look at doing cold calls as you're kind of like working out. It's a mental
okay.
workout.
Interesting. Yeah. For me, I mean, who doesn't like to help people, right? That's the whole point of, you're in insurance, you help a lot of different type of people and a lot of different types of situations. And for me, when it comes to real estate, and my mindset is I want to help if I'm getting listings, if I'm trying to get a listing, I want to help somebody maximize the value of their house and get as much money as possible in their pocket for them. Because ultimately, if somebody's trying to sell their house, that's my job as a realtor, and also to help make the process as easy for them as possible. Right. So when I'm trying to get a listing, I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to help them make money, and I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. Because listen, I've lived a very comfortable life, and I haven't had to gone through difficult situations like some of these people who are selling their house, because you don't know what type of situation they're going to be in. Relative passed away, or they just can't afford the house anymore and they don't want to go into foreclosure, so they just got to get rid of it. And I feel like my job as a realtor is to help them capitalize on that investment, because the house is an investment, and make it as easy for them as possible. So that's sort of like my mindset is I'm trying to help these people. And I can understand if you think that sounds fake, but for me, it's not. Like, I want to help people, and when I go into a phone call with that mindset, it's easy for me, because who doesn't want to help people? You know what I mean? And it's just like, I've been helping recruiting people into our brokerage, at Keller Williams Coastal. And I think we have the greatest brokerage in New England, and I believe that. So when I am calling and I believe in something, again, it makes it easy for me. You know what I mean? So for me, mindset is huge, and I've said this in the past, coming from a baseball background, and is I think is very underrated. Is, I know it's like, sounds silly to compare a sport to real life, but for me, it's something that has stood with me for a long time. I was used to failure in baseball, especially not being a great player. I failed a lot, and learning how to fail taught me, to deal with the kickback that I get in business. Just people who have a constant stick up their, behind, and just hang up on you, or say, I don't want to pay you realtors because you guys are sleazy, or you're just wasting your time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a realtor. And then I see on Zillow that their house has been on market for 203 days. And I'm like, oh, okay. You don't need a realtor. Okay. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, that just mindset for me has been like that. Not sure, if you've had any similar experiences to that now being in real estate. But yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
long drawn out, me talking too much. So
yeah, I see that's the challenge again, for your phone calls that you're making, are you calling businesses, or are you more calling individuals?
So, I mean, on the 3D printing side, I would be calling businesses.
But the real estate side.
On the real estate side, yeah, it's all individuals.
All right. So when I was cold calling, and pretty much throughout my career, I was more focused on B2B,
Mm-hmm.
business to business. And so I was always calling businesses, and it's dealing with the gatekeeper. So
Yeah.
the biggest challenge on the business side, commercial side is, you're calling, a lot of these businesses have secretaries, they have people, that answer the phones, and it's very difficult to get past the gatekeeper to get to the decision maker in order to get an appointment. So it takes a lot of, skill and experience to do that, to be able to get past the original person. I think what makes a good salesperson, I definitely agree with what you said, believing in what you do, doing it for the right reasons, because we all know there's just like there's real estate agents out there that may not be selling things for the right reasons. Are they looking out for their customers' best interest or their best interest? You have it in every industry. Happens in the insurance industry, real estate industry, wherever there's sales involved. Right. You have to be, there is that level of, is a person doing it for the right reasons? And I say more times than not, I hope that people in the insurance industry and people in the real estate industry are doing it for the right reasons. I really hope that's the case. I probably think that's the case. But then again, you always have those people out there that may not be doing it for that particular reason. But I think as far as cold calls are concerned, it's a very big difference between B2B, B2C, or individual selling to individuals versus individual or businesses selling to businesses. Someone that'd be good for you in a future podcast is I have a part-time telemarketer. His name is George. He's 93 years old.
Oh, I think I've met him before.
Yeah,
yes,
you met him. He has a really interesting life story, much more interesting than mine, and he used to run a life insurance sales department or a team in Rhode Island, had 60 agents, 50 to 60 people working for him. And he's not in a position in his life where he needs to work, but he chooses to work at 93 years old because he wants to, be part of something, wants to be, appreciated, which he is appreciated. And he is the best telemarketer I've ever seen in my life. And I've known a lot of telemarketers. It's just, he's been doing it for probably his whole lifetime, I suspect, but maybe for life insurance, but then, I know he's been doing it for my industry for like the last 20 to 30 years. So it's just, that level of experience. And he handwrites, after speaking with people, he actually handwrites thank you cards and mails it to them. And if we're taking his call, so he takes an approach that, I wish more people in today's day and age actually did, because I think they'd be more successful if they did a lot of the little things that he does. If you have a meeting with someone, maybe, I don't know if you send a handwritten thank you card, but I think
I have in the past. Yeah.
But I think, all the little things that he does, I think we should all do. And even I wish I was more consistent on doing some of the things that he does, but I think there's definitely a lot to learn from, other generations and the way other people do things. So I think, maybe at some point we should try to coordinate George on the podcast.
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. But I just thought of something, and it'll come back to me in a minute. But you said been doing it for 30 years, and 30 years ago he was still 63, which is crazy. But absolutely amazing. So shout out to George. Oh, so what do you think is the biggest difference between you when you first started sales and now? What is the biggest progression you think you've made over those years?
Confidence and knowledge, by far. Confidence and knowledge. I always tell people that are getting into the insurance industry, there's when you first start, you have to gain the knowledge base. It takes a long time. Some people pick it up sooner than others, but the longer you've been in it, and the more knowledge you obtain, I think the knowledge gives you the confidence that you need to be successful. Or a lot of people,
knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power. So, I mean, when you can look at something, you look at the policies, and you fully understand everything, and that gives you the confidence that you need to be successful, and you can analyze and break it all down. And I know the approach I take is to do a coverage analysis for every customer. I'd say only about maybe 50% of the time when I go meet with a new business, am I going to actually try to even go after their insurance, or see if it makes sense to even work on it, because there's a lot of times that the current agent did a good job and it may not make sense to work on it, because maybe they're already with the best program they could be with, and knowing when to walk away, which is a little bit different than maybe on the real estate side, but at least in what we do, everyone already has what they're buying. Most people already have an insurance policy, whether it's home, auto, or business insurance. Usually someone already has it. So
right. I feel like you mentioned real estate again. I feel like I said, I think Keller Williams Coastal is the best brokerage in Rhode Island, but that doesn't mean that the rest are bad. like every single one has their benefits and drawbacks, and that's that. It's a fact. Sometimes one might be a better fit for you than the other, and that's okay. But yeah, in real estate, it's just sad to see, other realtors or other people say bad things about other brokerages just because they exist. You know what I mean? And that's something that recently I experienced. I met this guy at an open house, and he was looking to relocate from Southern Rhode Island into like Northern Rhode Island, still rural, but closer to things. And he has a realtor who he's grown up with. And of course, I mean, I know I'm going to be good at real estate, still looking to get that first deal done, but I have buyer contracts signed right now with great people, and I've been doing everything I can to help them make their home, finding a home easy as possible. And this guy who this person grew up with was a great realtor. And I didn't say, hey, well, I'm better. I said, well, I'm not going to say the person's name. I'm glad that you have him in his corner. And I'm sure he'll take care of you. This person's a great realtor. I know he is. He has a great reputation. So if you do need any questions, I'm always here. If you guys need help with anything, I'm here. But you got a great realtor in your corner. So good luck. And, I'm sure you'll be successful.
And people appreciate that because it happens in my industry all the time. You walk away, you leave a good impression with someone.
Mm-hmm.
If something happens with their relationship with that other realtor or the other insurance agent, and you made an impression with that person, they will, hopefully you're the first person they call if something goes wrong or they're not happy. So
Mm-hmm.
Being honest and trying to help someone out and letting them know what you just said is great because, like I said, if you can be the first, in the designated box, in the batter's box, the next up, that's a good place to be in, even if you don't get a chance to, take a swing. So, that's a great opportunity.
Yeah. A lot of great conversation about sales here, but I know you had mentioned about I know this is a very sad topic, but you mentioned 9/11. I don't know if you feel comfortable talking about that experience in a little bit more detail. But yeah, I mean, can you explain how do you think it changed you as a person on the other end of it, helping all those families, from your perspective? How do you think it changed you as a person?
Oh, it was the most stressful time I'd say in my life when I was handling those claims. I talk about making phone calls and making cold calls. That was like making cold calls to people where there was a more likely chance than not that their spouse was going to be not alive, because you saw the building crumble. You knew that a lot of people were dead. So you were basically almost guaranteed to call, or a very good chance you'd be calling someone and their spouse wouldn't be alive. So, and you would expect that you had all different levels of reaction from their spouse. Some were hysterical, some were understandably, and some were, not hysterical, just, and everyone had a different, completely different reaction on, with, the phone calls, but those were miserable phone calls to make. It was very, very, very difficult, and handling all the claims were, very emotional. I had some of the people that were, victims, whether they were alive victims or passed away. There was a lot of nationwide news coverage, and I was talking to people that were on the Oprah Winfrey show and this show and that show. There were some famous people, and the whole situation was just very stressful. It was not. That was probably, I always tell people that was the beginning of the end of my claims career, handling those accounts. And at first I did it because, we were there in the middle. You never forget where you were when that happened. I was at the office, had my little cube. Everyone said, hey, something happened in New York. So we all, left, we had like a lunchroom that had a TV in it, and they put the TV on and saw, one of the buildings was like, burning, and, a plane had hit it. They didn't know what was going on. All the airspace was getting shut down. And then you saw the second, I think the cameras were on when they saw the second building hit it, because we were all watching the TV after the first building got hit, and then the second building got hit. And then pretty much everyone was like glued in front of the TV, like, all day when that happened. And then when, we saw the buildings come down, then we knew that, a bunch of our, not direct coworkers, but kind of like, affiliated coworkers were on the top floors of that building. And, it was like, and then they asked for volunteers. And, back then when that happened, it was obviously a terrorist attack. And, I think America as a whole was very patriotic. And, I, felt like it was a good, I wanted to go down there I felt like it was like my job to help. It was like something, I did it because I was trying to help, not because I necessarily wanted to do it, because I knew probably going into it that it would involve some stress. I didn't know the level of stress that would be involved, but I knew it was going to be definitely stressful. So.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I couldn't imagine what it's like. I was only a few months old at that point. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so why don't we move on to your current business? Right. So you said you were involved with a number of other different types of businesses as well. But let's just focus on insurance for now. So you said you started Kingston Insurance in COVID, right? Or right?
Yep.
In the middle of COVID?
Yep, during the middle of COVID. Yeah. When it was first happening.
All right. Interesting. So throughout your insurance career, did you always want to sort of do your own thing and own your own business?
I had always had a desire. I had looked at it several times during my career, but there was never really the right time. And the challenge with insurance is that a lot of insurance agencies, what makes, especially on the independent agency side, that makes them good is having access to markets. And the challenge when you open your own insurance business, an independent agency, is a lot of the insurance companies don't want to give you access to their markets because they don't know, are you a reputable person? Are you going to write enough business to make it worth their while? So it's very hard when you're opening an agency to be able to get carriers. So that's the first stumbling block you have to deal with when you open your own insurance agency. So yes, I always did want to open one, but trying to find, be in a position to be able to find the right partnership with an insurance company or insurance companies and try to put it all together. And it's obviously a big, when you're starting something from scratch, which is what I did, like, you're starting from zero, you have zero income, zero revenue coming in to try to build something so that you have revenue coming in. So it's a big financial commitment. And, I had, young kids at home, and trying to, support a family or be involved with supporting a family. And then also trying to, start a business is very difficult. So that's why I think it took me quite a long time to decide to do it. I think I had looked back maybe 10 years prior. I considered doing it, but then I decided not to at that time. And a lot of it, ultimately, I think the barrier to entry, to be able to get the carriers was always the biggest problem. Now, over like the last maybe 10-ish years, 10 to 15 years, there's things that they call aggregators, which are almost like market access companies that a lot of like smaller independent agents need to go to in order to access the carriers, where they kind of take the business from a lot of different small agencies and then, group all this business together. And then, almost gives you like, purchasing power with the insurance companies in order to be able to get access to them. So pretty much, and today, if you're a small agency as a startup, you pretty much have no choice. You have to join an aggregator, because if you don't, if you just try to get your own individual markets, you're pretty much going to have very few markets you'll be able to get. Maybe able to get one or two or three, or maybe up to five, but you will not be able to get, 20, 30, 40, 50 different insurance companies. And an agency, no matter how good you are, you're only as good to some extent as also your carriers are. So if you don't have an option for every customer, or try the best you can to help every customer out, because every company is different, it limits your availability to be able to help your customers. Even if you could be the best insurance agent in the world, the most knowledgeable, but if you don't have if you can't place them in with a company that's going to give the right coverages with the right price, you're not going to have an opportunity. Where that's what makes insurance a little bit different, is it's just having the markets that you need in order to to write customers. So that was the challenge. And when I found I did find a solution to the challenge. I joined an aggregator, and because of that, I have access to pretty much almost all the markets that there are, that are available right now. Not all of them. I don't have every company, but not every agency usually has every single insurance company that's out there. I'd say a lot of us have maybe 80% of the same carriers, generally speaking. And then I'd say the other 20% of carriers that we have can sometimes change from agency to agency, but a lot of the agents have the same national carriers. Not everyone, but a lot of them do. So
Interesting. So what do you feel like makes Kingston Insurance special or different from other insurance agencies?
I would say, and I could talk about it from my perspective, because like 85% of the business at the insurance agency are pretty much just my customers, my personal customers. And I'd say I provide a concierge level of service to my customers. Which becomes difficult, but it's being available pretty much 24/7. I mean, a lot of my customers, I'll be, emailing, texting customers at 6 a.m. in the morning to like 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. They have they're calling, they text me or calling me on Saturdays and Sundays. I had a customer that needed to add a business vehicle because they were going to a dealership on a Saturday, and we had to add it then. Or even on the personal lines side, I had a customer that had a bad accident with someone else on a Sunday. And he called me up and he's like, "What do I do? I need help." The other person wants to speak to someone at the agency. So I ended up, speaking to that person on a Sunday. So I think what makes not every insurance agent, a lot of insurance agencies, they're only open, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and that's what you're going to get. So I think that is an important difference. And I basically say it like it is to all my customers, and brutally honest sometimes. And that's, with coverages and everything that they need. So, and if I can,
and access to all those different carriers as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have comparable markets, that I have some markets that other agencies don't have, and other agencies have some markets that, that we don't have. And I've actually referred customers that I've had in place. If I didn't feel like I could do a good job anymore for them, I've referred them to other insurance agents. I have a relationship with somebody, a gentleman that works for a direct writer in Rhode Island who's a competitor, but this competitor refers me business and I refer him some business. And, sometimes I'm not the best solution for everyone, depending on the type of business that they are. And I think, just being honest, and, I've lost accounts because I've, referred business, current clients to competitors, that can do a better job sometimes than me, depending on the type of business and what they do and all the circumstances. So you can't always be a one-stop solution for every single person. And if an agent says that, then I don't know if that's always the case, but because sometimes there's other options out there that we can't offer. So, but a lot of people don't want to, in sales, they always want to be that only solution. So sometimes you can't always be the only solution.
Yeah. What's really great is I had Larry Fish on my podcast. Oh gosh, more than 10 episodes ago now. I don't know if you met Larry before. Probably have.
Once. Yeah. Once.
Okay. So Larry's a local legend for all you people that don't live in Rhode Island. And he's all about giving back, right? And I believe karma is real for a lot of people, that karma is, God or a higher power of some sort. But was really, really funny is that when I had Larry on that evening, we got like takeout Chinese, right? And I have this fortune taped to my monitor, and it says, first learn to give and then the universe will reward you. And I got that the night after I had Larry on, who was all about giving back, right? And I'm just like, I mean, come on, like that doesn't happen. That's not a coincidence, and you're 100% right when it comes to, sometimes you're not the biggest fit, you bet the best fit, and you need to refer. That happens with me in 3D printing. Sometimes somebody needs a different type of material that I don't have. I have a great relationship with a company I used to work for in Quonset. R&D Technologies is an amazing company. They're over in Quonset. They do industrial 3D printing. And sometimes what I can do just isn't the best fit for them. So I send some work over to them every once in a while. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes you need to bite the bullet and just say, sorry, I mean, I'm not the best fit for you, but here's a person who might be. So I think that greatly benefits you, like you said earlier, and like I talked about earlier with, talking to that potential client in real estate, this person that you grew up with is a much better, or is a great realtor, and it's a perfect fit for you. You know what I mean? But you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that I've definitely learned exponentially over the past 6 months, just trying to help as many people as possible and just doing what I can, you know what I mean? Yeah, so now if you want to, I'd love to talk about the CBD and the cannabis businesses, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So how does one start that type of business? Because obviously it's riddled with regulation and whatnot.
Just having relationships with people that are in the industry, and I've had a lot of relationships with friends and people I knew that were in the industry, and I've always had an interest in the plant. I've seen how it's helped patients, people that have had stage 3, stage 4 different levels of cancer, and how it allowed some of them to live pain free or pain or less pain for extended periods of time. I know a couple people that were diagnosed where they should have died really quick, after having stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. And I've known several people that have they've been able to prolong their lives by a year or two, from cannabis. So, but I think it helps a lot with pain. So as you know, it went recreational in Rhode Island recently. Last fall, it went recreational. But I think that there's also a strong medical component to it. And I believe in the medical component of cannabis. And so that's why I'm a big proponent of it. So I don't due to my own how I feel, I can't really partake anymore in it because of how it makes me feel. But I do believe I'm a strong proponent of cannabis. I do believe in cannabis. I think it's a great thing. And CBD as well. And CBD is derived from the hemp plant, which hemp is basically the same plant as cannabis, except it was bred to have a much lower percentage of THC. So it's in the same family, but it's just significant. Hemp has significantly more. It's CBD and a minimal amount of THC for it to be considered legal from a hemp basis. So hemp is a great product as well. CBD is an excellent product, and there's a lot of things you can do with hemp. So I think the CBD industry is continuing to blossom. It's exploding, and I think it's just a matter of time before it becomes legal on a national basis. So I think it's a great product.
Yeah, I think medically, obviously, I completely agree with you. It's crazy it took this long for this many people to realize that that it could help, and I on the recreational side, I don't drink, so I don't really do any of that stuff. But I mean, you can't die from marijuana poisoning, but you can die from alcohol poisoning. And there's always been like, oh, well, you smoke pot or you do this, you're a druggie, you're not a good person. Like, that's just a ridiculous stigma that's been around it that is sad. You know what I mean? And the same person will go get drunk on alcohol. So it was like,
there's two challenges though with cannabis. One is the reason it's probably not already legal on a federal basis is because cannabis and driving. So there's people can build up different tolerances to cannabis, similar to alcohol, but in alcohol, once you've drank too much alcohol, they have a test they can give you that can detect that based on this amount you shouldn't be driving. It's the same thing. Cannabis. People again can build up the tolerances to cannabis, but people will argue, oh, well, you can smoke as much cannabis as you want, but it does have, depending if someone's never smoked cannabis and then they, take, 100 milligrams of, edibles and they're driving after it's already kicked in, like, are they in the best spot to be driving after they,
there's no way to test how high they are.
That's probably one reason or an issue. And the other thing is on the cannabis side is on edibles specifically. If you smoke cannabis, the how long it lasts, a couple hours, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the individual. But when you ingest it, because of the process, it lasts the effects last much longer. And hospitals and other city, and I'm not going to talk about Rhode Island, but out west where it's been legalized from recreational basis much longer, people have panic attacks and people are not, they take a little bit of cannabis, they as an edible, they don't feel the effects right away after like a half an hour. They just take more and then they still don't feel it. They take more. Now all of a sudden they've taken 3 times the dose. And now they're not used to it because they may be new and then they've had a panic attack or they're concerned, so from that perspective, that can also sometimes be a challenge. But I think if it's used and are responsible and not driving and you're doing it in the right basis, I think that it's a great product. And CBD is beneficial because you can get a lot of the benefits without the psychoactive effect of THC, but they can make modifications. I'm not going to get into it, but there's other products like D8 and other things they sell on the CBD side as well. So there's all different products that are available right now for CBD products that are pretty interesting. So, but you could have a whole separate podcast just on hemp and cannabis.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about marijuana, go listen.
If you want some visitors, let me know. Yeah. I can have many people in the CBD and cannabis industry come on as a visitor for you.
Yeah, no, you just go listen to Joe Rogan. Than me.
Yeah. I know enough to be dangerous on it.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Thank you for sharing that. And it's been an absolutely amazing conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I end every podcast with this question. And, when you have all these different types of people from all these different perspectives, it's great to hear everybody's answer to this question. So if you were to leave one piece of advice to the listener, it could be about business, life, anything you want it to be, what would that piece of advice be?
So my piece of advice would be, and I think about this for my kids, if you had to do whatever you want to do for a career, I think the most important thing, and this is going to sound corny, but the most important thing is to do what you want to do as a career because you love it, you enjoy it, and not because of the money. I think doing what, living your life because it's fun and enjoyable is the most, important thing, more than, looking at it from strictly a compensation standpoint.
Absolutely. I have right there, I've said this on the podcast before, Steve Jobs sign that says the only way to do great work is to love what you do. And also not, dreading getting up into the morning and going to the office or going to work. And that's something that I've adapted over the past few years is that I don't dread getting up in the morning. I get up and I just do what I got to do for the day. It's not work to me. It's just living, and you're absolutely right. And that's a great piece of advice. And thank you for sharing that. But yeah, Doug, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, absolutely amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and for all of you listening, I will link Kingston Insurance in the podcast description. And do you have a Facebook account that you want to give a shout out, or Instagram or something?
Yeah, we're on Facebook and Instagram as Kingston Insurance. I think it's at KingstonInsuranceAgency.com. Or sorry, at Kingston Insurance Agency.
Great. So make sure to go follow them. And for everybody else that wants to support the podcast and you want to get episodes weeks in advance, you can subscribe on Patreon for as little as $3 a month, which I think is a phenomenal deal. You pay $15 a month for Netflix or Spotify or whatever. For $3 a month, you get to listen to great people like Doug and all these great guests I have on weeks in advance before they're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those other platforms. You can get them weeks in advance on patreon.com. So make sure to go support the podcast. And if you're really feeling good, you can pay $5 or $10 a month if you really want to support the podcast. It's totally up to you. But also make sure to follow Knowledge is Power on Instagram and Facebook. We're uploading podcasts to Facebook now, which is pretty fun. But yeah, thank you again, Doug, for coming on. And thank you all for listening. And I will catch you guys in the next